What's up, everybody? This is Southside Hair. Today we are back with another tier list video. Today we're going to be doing my top horror movies of all time. We're going to do my top 10 in order from least favorite to favorite, starting off with 3 honorable mentions. Now, all 3 honorable mentions are cosmic horror, so it's like a trilogy of cosmic horror to kick off the list. This is in no particular order for these 3, by the way. Coming in first, we have The Mist, based on a novella by Stephen King. Not the best CGI, it has aged pretty horribly, but it has amazing acting, absolutely terrifying. The premise of it is just awesome. One of the best endings in not only horror movies, but all of film. Like, even Stephen King himself, he left the theater, and the first thing he said was, "I wish I thought of that." Like, that is very, very high praise. For anybody unfamiliar, spoiler alert, the book ends with them just driving down that road, and it just ends. You know, it's kind of one of those, you decide what's going to happen to them, they're probably screwed, but, you know, it's one of those type of stories. And that's cool, but you have to see the movie. It is so much more than that. It is so much more than that. Alright, coming in for our second honorable mention is Hellraiser 2. This is an amazing sequel. As you'll find in this list, I have a lot of sequels in here. I think sequels and remakes and reboots, they are criminally underrated. It does fall victim to some of the sequel cliches of, you know, bigger and better, but it does it well. It has a really awesome MC Escher reference. It has a really awesome Edgar Allan Poe reference to the Conqueror Worm. It's just all around really, really solid. Deserves more credit. Honestly, I think it deserves more credit than the first one, but that's just my personal opinion. Our third and final honorable mention before we kick off the top 10 is Event Horizon. This is more of like a sci-fi action spooky hybrid, but it does it amazingly well. So basically, this director, he just got done with Mortal Kombat, and he got this studio to give him a ton of money, a huge budget. It had an amazing cast. It had Morpheus, aka Furious Styles. It had Sam from Jurassic Park, doing what he does best, by the way. Cosmic horror was like his thing. That dude, he would make Lovecraft proud. He was in so many disgusting films throughout the 80s and the 90s that just, they were on another level, you know? It's clever, it's disgusting, it's super scary. Honestly, I think it did really good things for Paul Anderson, because that led to him getting the role as director of many Resident Evil movies, which I know a lot of people don't enjoy the Resident Evil movies, but I am a sucker for those movies. They're just plain fun. A lot of people enjoy the Fast and the Furious movies, ironically, and I'm on that same level with the Resident Evil movies. Although I would even argue that it's not even ironic, I just enjoy them. Alright, so coming in at number 10 is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. Another sequel. Again, falls victim to the sequel cliche of bigger and better and bloodier, but it does it so well. It has the introduction to the brother Chop Top. Chop Top is the coolest. Oh man, a Vietnam vet who's lost his mind with a plate in his head? I'm down. Timeless character. Dennis Hopper as an absolute madman chopping down an underground tunnel with the chainsaws and everything? I'm down. So good. Final Girl, the radio host, absolutely kills it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, one of the best sequels of all time. I honestly enjoy it more than Part 1. I think Part 1 is great, but I think Part 1 does suffer from taking itself a bit too seriously. At times it can be kind of like an art student final project, and that's cool, but I'd rather watch Part 2. Coming in at number 9 is The Witch, or The Vitch, right? That's how it's spelled. Robert Eggers' debut directing and debut writing, absolute masterpiece. It's a period piece of colonial times when witchcraft was an actual serious suspicion. Everything is 100% immersive, authentic, believable, from the accents to the clothes. Even the child actors, which is rare. I usually hate child actors because they just do such a corny job, and they kill it. These kids are some of the best actors I've ever seen for their age. This movie is cruel. This movie is harsh. It straight up is colonial United States. It's such a good one. you need to watch The Witch. The Witch, because a bunch of V's is way cooler than a W. Coming in at number 8 is Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, as I mentioned in my first YouTube video, Freddy is easily the best out of the big three. And for those of you that may not have watched it, first of all, go back and watch it. But in case you haven't yet, the big three I'm referring to is, of course, Jason, Michael Myers, and Freddy Krueger. Nothing can top Freddy Krueger. Nothing can top the original Nightmare on Elm Street. It's super creative, it's scary as hell, it's disgusting. It sneaks in some really clever religious commentary, both with the cross and the bed scene, and then when Freddy refers to his blade glove as being God in one of the dream sequences, it sneaks in commentary on parents going on witch hunting for things that are not fit for the children, only to turn around and not look after their own children properly. It's just well crafted, it's smart as hell, and it's disguised as a goofy, stupid movie. It's like one of those smart kids who knows that they're smart, so they act dumb. And it's just, it does it so well. It's really, really good. Freddy Krueger, best out of the top three. Nightmare on Elm Street, best out of all the Freddy Kruegers. Coming in at number 7 is It Follows. Now, this movie deserves to be on the tier list just because of the soundtrack alone, if I'm being completely honest. Add to that, the concept is so freaking creative. Add to that it's well acted. Add to that it's so disorienting. You know, like, the film never really reveals what era it takes place in. It never reveals what season it takes place in. You know, people are watching TV in black and white. They're using landline phones. There's modern cars. There's like some sort of cell phone tablet device. There's leaves on the ground and like Halloween decorations, but this girl is like swimming even though people are wearing like winter coats. Like, why is she in a pool in her backyard but people are wearing like... It's a low-key maze, and you don't realize it until like the second or third time you watch it. The monster or the curse or whatever you want to call it is absolutely horrifying. It's a great commentary on the misconceptions of STDs and also doubles as a metaphor for growing up in general. It just has a great ending and a great soundtrack. I cannot emphasize enough how good this soundtrack is. Okay, so coming in at number 6 is Psycho 2. This is another sequel. Unlike Texas Chainsaw 2 and Hellraiser 2, which we already went over, this movie does not suffer from the typical sequel cliches of bigger is better, bloodier is better, large kill count, body pieces everywhere. This movie is the anti-sequel. It doesn't go for that flowchart. What makes that even better is that the novel, it absolutely tried to. It tried to give Norman Bates this huge body count. He escapes from prison and he travels across the country. It's not just this one little area by his house. It's the whole freaking West Coast, and he leaves a trail of bodies along the way, and it's just like, it's a big mess, you know? And this movie comes along, and spoiler alert, Norman only kills one person. And it isn't until the very end of the film. Everybody falls at the hands of his true mother. You don't even learn about any of this until the end credits roll. You're just kept in the dark about it. It's just like, it's so clever about misleading you. Earlier in the film, he's being like bullied at his job where he works, and the camera like randomly shows her face. And so like, you're like, why is this old lady being shown on the face? What's going on? It's just awkward, and it seems like poor editing. And actually, just like the actor, or the actress, whatever, who is staying at his place, she's always like fumbling around her words, and like that seems like poor acting as well. But then it all comes together that she's actually playing him, that's actually his mom, and it's just like, oh man, you have these moments that come across as poor acting, poor editing, then the movie's like, nah, we knew what we were doing all along, just shut up and watch. It's slick, it's calm, cool, and collected. In my opinion, it's the best sequel of all time. It is better than the original Psycho. Easily. Moving on to the top 5. Coming in at number 5 is The Exorcist. The Exorcist is another work of art disguised as a disgusting shock value gore movie. It's this big snowball rolling down a mountain so fast that when it hits you, you're so buried that you may have missed that it's a piece on statutory rape, the way families hide statutory rape, sexual assault within families and within religions, and ultimately how the victim is treated as the evil one. There's something to be said about a horror movie that parades around as one thing and forces you to completely miss that it's actually about something else. It's very blatant. It's very in your face. It's very obvious. You just missed it because she was shoving a crucifix in her crotch and vomiting venom. So like you watch it the second time and it's like, oh, wow, this is actually a really smart film. I just completely missed it because she was crab walking upside down, going down a flight of stairs while spitting blood and pissing herself. Whoops. You know, it's so good. It's ridiculously smart. All right, coming in at number 4 is Rosemary's Baby. Here goes another film disguised as religious theme. This film is hands down a religious horror piece, sure, but it's also the best horror movie to make commentary on rape. Only this time, instead of The Exorcist doing it on, statutory rape, it dares to make commentary on spousal rape. Okay, which is mind-blowing when you realize this movie was made in 1968. I don't know about you, but when I think of people in the 60s, I don't really think of people making $3.2 million art pieces about women's rights. I don't even think people in the 60s knew that a wife could be raped by her husband. This movie is just amazing. It's crucial themes of how the victim is treated like the psychopath. The victim is treated as the one constantly making the mistakes when speaking up. This film was 50 years ahead of its time. And, like, don't get me wrong, it's a very popular film and gets a ton of credit, but had it come out in 2018, it would have burned the house down even harder. Like, many houses, all houses, the entire neighborhood, you know? And that's saying so much because it's already so popular. You know, it would have been even bigger. It was just half a century early. Straight up. Coming in at the top 3, we're down to the final 3. Number 3 is Hereditary. Got a nice modern one for you. Much like Robert Eggers, this is the debut film from fellow child of the 1980s, if I do say so myself, Ari Aster. He just showed up out of nowhere, furiously picking up the ball where filmmakers like Tarantino, P.T. Anderson, Lynch, etc., where they all dropped it. Let's be real, they're on their way out, they dropped the ball. Robert Eggers and Ari Aster picking up the ball where they left it off. And no offense to any of those amazing filmmakers, let's be honest, they're on their way out, and the future of film was looking slightly bleak and worrisome, to say the absolute least. Then The Witch drops in 2015, then this absolute masterpiece, Hereditary, drops in 2018. This film is straight up modern day Mozart. This film is easily the finest work of art to be released in all of the 2000s, and that's including all forms of media, books, movies, music, except maybe Frank Ocean's Blonde, but that's another story. Spent a lot of time rambling about what an amazing film this is rather than discussing what it has to offer, but just know it's smart and filled with multiple themes going on at once, with notes of Kubrick, Carpenter, all of them tossed in for good measure. It's simply horrifying, it's well acted. Colin Stetson wrote an amazing soundtrack for it. It may not be the best soundtrack on this top 10 because It Follows takes that prize, but Stetson is a genius. His work on this film and Color Out of Space are beautiful, and it really ties together the ending scene of Hereditary. It's one of my favorite ending scenes in all of horror. One of the most terrifying third acts of all of horror, well, I'm being honest, Coming in at number 2 is The Thing. Now, you could be a smartass and rub it in people's faces, if they hate remakes and say, see, look at this, a remake is one of the best horror movies of all time, it's one of the best movies of all time. But I'm not really part of that argument, The fact is, this movie is based off the novella Who Goes There, which happens to be the same source material for the black and white film The Thing from Another World. This is not a remake of that film, it's just looking at the novella from a new angle, a new adaptation, a new shade of light. And I tell you, this new shade of light is very dark, very dreary, This film is overflowing with really heavy themes of nuclear winter, racism, sexism, the fact that there isn't a single female role as a group of males dictate the outcome of the entire planet as we know it. This movie parades around as a sci-fi, gory, action, explosion, blow-em-up horror movie, but it's extremely complex, extremely existential, and crucial for self-reflection on how the powers that be run our world or destroy our world. They really got away with making one of the smartest films truly disgusting. The Thing, coming in at number 2. Alrighty, coming in at number 1. This is the big one. This is easily the smartest horror film ever made. 6 stories being told at once, confusing the viewer into thinking it's just one ghost story. This is easily the scariest horror film ever made. I'm in my 30s. I still cannot watch this before bed unless I'm trying to have nightmares. It is The Shining. It endlessly contradicts itself, making things feel huge even though they're claustrophobic, putting doors in areas that don't make sense, having natural light shine on characters where windows simply cannot exist, where sunlight simply cannot shine through. Kubrick is quite possibly the greatest filmmaker who has ever lived, and he truly mastered the horror genre with this one. Domestic abuse, statutory rape, addiction, Native American genocide, the facade of American currency and money in general, war, struggling artists, and yes, above all that, yes, ghosts and manifestations. Finally, that one thing that you think it is about, it's also about that too. This movie can be so much. It could be a tale of one man's return to the bottle, return to his red rum, you know, the elevator door opening up and accepting that wine down his throat, you know? It can be a tale of ghosts possessing a poor, influential soul. It can be a tale of a gifted, supernatural boy manipulating his abusive father into the past. It could be a metaphor for Vietnam. It could be a metaphor for the vanishing gold from banks. And the correct answer is, it's all of those things. Nobody dies, yet people do die. It was all just a story, you know, the author was writing alone in this cabin, but it also did happen. That's the beauty of Kubrick, is that unlike films like The Exorcist, where it parades around as a gory horror, but it's actually about statutory rape, The Shining parades around as everything, and it actually is about everything. I don't think there will ever be another horror movie capable of topping this one. I don't think there will ever be another film capable of topping this one. It has levels upon levels of amazing writing and just hidden themes that are still found to this day. This movie is still being studied and truly discovered because it's so well coded. It's a timeless masterpiece. Easily my favorite horror movie. I think you should watch it. I think everyone should watch it at least once a month. The Shining, number 1. Thank you for watching another tier list. I am Southside Hair. Please follow my Twitch channel where we play plenty of balloons and talk about movies and stuff. Think like Lisa, act like Bart.